SMS Prinz Adalbert, His Majesty's ship Prinz Adalbert, was an armored cruiser built in the early 1900s for the German Kaiserliche Marine, Imperial Navy, named after Prince Adalbert of Prussia, former commander-in-chief of the Prussian Navy. She was the lead ship of her class, which included a second ship, Friedrich Karl. Prinz Adalbert was built at the Imperial Dockyard in Kiel. Her keel was laid in April 1900, and she was launched in June 1901. Her completion in January 1904 had been delayed by a surplus of construction projects at the Imperial Dockyard. She was armed with a main battery of 4 21 cm, 8.3-inch guns, a significant improvement over the previous armored cruiser, Prinz Heinrich, which carried only 2 24 cm, 9.4-inch guns. The ship was capable of a top speed of 20 knots, 37 km per hour, 23 miles per hour. SMS Prinz Adalbert at full speed. Regarding her history, she was part of the German Empire. Her name was Prinz Adalbert. Her namesake was Prince Adalbert of Prussia. Her builder was Kaiserliche Werft, Kiel. She was laid down April 1900. She was launched the 22nd of June 1901. She was christened by Princess Irene of Prussia. She was commissioned the 12th of January 1904. She met her fate getting torpedoed and sunk the 23rd of October 1915. Regarding her general characteristics, her class and type was Prinz Adalbert-class cruiser. Her displacement on normal was 9,087 metric tons, 8,943 long tons, and on full load was 9,875 tons, 9,719 long tons. Her length was 126.5 meters, 415 feet, OA. Her beam was 19.6 meters, 64 feet 4 inches. Her draft was 7.43 meters, 24 feet 5 inches. Her installed power was 14 water tube boilers running 16,200 PS, 16,000 HP. Her propulsion was 3 screw propellers and 3 triple expansion steam engines. Her speed was 20 knots, 37 km per hour, 23 miles per hour. Her range was 5,080 nautical miles, 9,410 kilometers, 5,850 miles, at 12 knots, 22 kilometers per hour, 14 miles per hour. Her complement was 35 officers and 551 enlisted men. Her armament was 4 21 centimeters, 8.3-inch, 10 15 centimeters, 5.9-inch, 12 8.8 centimeters, 3.5-inch, SKL/35, and 445 centimeters, 17.7-inch, torpedo tubes. Her armor on belt was 100 millimeters, 3.9 inches, on turrets was 150 millimeters, 5.9 inches, on deck was 40 to 80 millimeters, 1.6 to 3.1 inches, and on conning tower was 150 millimeters. Upon commissioning, Prinz Adalbert served as a gunnery training ship, a role she held for the majority of her career. She trained with the Heimatflotte, Home Fleet, later renamed the Hochseeflotte, High Seas Fleet, throughout the early 1900s, and she made several visits to foreign countries. After the outbreak of World War I in July 1914, she was assigned to the reconnaissance forces in the Baltic and was tasked with protecting the German coast from Russian attacks. After her sister ship was sunk in November 1914, she became the flagship of the cruiser squadron in the Baltic. She conducted operations against Russian forces, including bombarding the port of Libau in support of the German army. She was torpedoed by a British submarine in July 1915, but was able to return to port and was repaired. She was torpedoed a second time on the 23rd of October 1915. The torpedo detonated her ammunition magazines and destroyed the ship. She sank quickly with heavy loss of life. Only 3 men were rescued from a crew of 675. This proved to be the worst German naval disaster in the Baltic during the war. Line drawing of Prinz Adalbert. The shaded areas represent the portions of the ship protected by armor. Prinz Adalbert was the second member of the Prinz Adalbert class, which were ordered under the Second Naval Law of 1900. The law called for a force of 14 armored cruisers that would be able to serve in Germany's colonial empire and scout for the main German fleet in home waters. The need to fill both roles was the result of budgetary limitations, which prevented Germany from building vessels specialized to each task. The Prinz Adalbert design was based on that of the previous armored cruiser, Prinz Heinrich, but incorporated a more powerful armament and more comprehensive armor protection. Prinz Adalbert displaced 9,087 metric tons, 8,943 long tons, as built and 9,875 tons, 9,719 long tons, fully loaded. She had an overall length of 126.5 meters, 415 feet, a beam of 19.6 meters, 64 feet 4 inches, and a draft of 7.43 meters, 24 feet 5 inches, forward. She was powered by 3 vertical triple expansion steam engines, with steam provided by 14 coal-fired water tube boilers. The engines were rated to produce 16,200 metric horsepower, 16,000 HP, for a maximum speed of 20 knots, 37 km per hour, 23 miles per hour, though she slightly exceeded these figures on speed trials. She carried up to 1,630 tons, 1,600 long tons, 1,800 short tons, of coal, which enabled a maximum range of up to 5,080 nautical miles, 9,410 kilometers, 5,850 miles, at a cruising speed of 12 knots, 22 kilometers per hour, 14 miles per hour. The ship's crew consisted of 35 officers and 551 enlisted men. She was armed with 4 21 cm, 8.3-inch guns arranged in 2 twin-gun turrets, one on either end of the superstructure, a significant improvement over Prinz Heinrich, which carried only 2 guns in single turrets. Her secondary armament consisted of 10 15 cm, 5.9-inch guns in individual casemate mounts. For defense against torpedo boats, she carried a battery of 12 8.8 cm, 3.5-inch guns, also in individual mounts. She was also equipped with 4 45 cm, 17.7-inch underwater torpedo tubes, one in the bow, one in the stern, and one on each broadside. The ship was protected by a 100 mm, 3.9-inch armored belt consisting of Krupp-cemented armor, along with an armored deck that was 40 to 80 mm, 1.6 to 3.1 inches, thick. Her main battery turrets had faces 150 mm, 5.9 inches, thick, and her conning tower had an equal amount of armor on its sides. Prinz Adalbert was ordered under the provisional name B and built at the Imperial Dockyard in Kiel under construction number 27. Her keel was laid in April 1900 and she was launched on the 22nd of June 1901. The launching ceremony was attended by Kaiser Wilhelm II, his wife Kaiser in Augusta Victoria, his brother Admiral Prince Heinrich and Wilhelm's son, Prince Adalbert of Prussia. The ceremony of christening the ship was performed by Princess Irene of Prussia, wife of Prince Heinrich, who then delivered a speech. Fitting out work proceeded slowly, in large part the result of the Imperial Dockyard attempting to build too many ships at once, but the work was eventually completed by the 12th of January 1904. Prinz Adalbert was commissioned into the Imperial German Navy the same day for sea trials, with Captain Zur See, Captain at Sea, Hermann Jacobsen in command. The ship was slated for service as a gunnery training ship. She had cost the Imperial German government 16,371,000 gold marks. Sea trials were completed by the 30th of May, after which Prinz Adalbert began her duties as a gunnery training ship. In September, the ship took part in the annual autumn maneuvers with the rest of the Heimatflotte, home fleet. A special training unit consisting of reserve ships, training ships like Prinz Adalbert, and a flotilla of torpedo boats was created in early 1905. Prinz Adalbert was the flagship of the unit from 1905 to 1907, flying the flag of Counter-Admiral, Rear Admiral, Hugo Z. Prinz Adalbert and the light cruiser Berlin escorted the Kaiser's yacht Hohenzollern to Sweden for a visit to King Oscar II in July 1905. The following month, she joined the light cruisers Undine and Nymphe for training maneuvers off Swinemund. The exercises were to test the ships against a simulated night attack by torpedo boats. The tests were observed by Counter-Admiral Ludwig Schroeder, the Inspector of Naval Weapons, aboard Prinz Adalbert. Wilhelm II boarded Prinz Adalbert for the conclusion of the exercises, in which the ship towed an old torpedo boat filled with coke while the light cruisers and torpedo boats fired on it with live shells. Prinz Adalbert did not participate in the 1905 autumn maneuvers, though she was present for the naval review at the end of the exercises on the 13th of September. In February 1906, the tender Fuchs was assigned to support Prinz Adalbert. From the 17th to 28th of June, the cruiser served as the flagship of Prince Heinrich, then the commander of the Baltic Sea Naval Station. During this period the ship traveled to Norway to take part in the coronation festivities for King Haakon VII. The cruiser again took part in the autumn maneuvers in 1907 and 1909. During the latter maneuvers, Prinz Adalbert took part in the reserve division, commanded again by Z.A., who had now been promoted to Vice Admiral. The ship served as the flagship of the 3rd Scouting Group, under Counter-Admiral Johannes Merton, who would go on to command the Ottoman fortifications at the Dardanelles during World War I. In March 1910 and March 1911, Prinz Adalbert conducted gunnery tests in the northern North Sea and visited Tórshavn and Vestmanna in the Faroe Islands. She visited Ålesund in Norway in July and August that year. The ship's first period in service came to an end in September, following a large naval review in the Kiel roadstead for Wilhelm II and Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, which began on the 5th of September. Prinz Adalbert was then decommissioned in Kiel on the 29th, with the armored cruiser Blücher taking her place as the fleet's gunnery training ship. After a lengthy overhaul, Prinz Adalbert returned to service on the 1st of November 1912, again with the artillery school. She was based in Sonderburg, where she replaced the armored cruiser Prinz Heinrich. Map of the North and Baltic Seas in 1911. At the outbreak of World War I in July 1914, Prinz Adalbert was brought into frontline service with the fleet, and Captain Xerxes Andreas Michelsen took command of the ship. She was assigned to the 4th Scouting Group, under the command of Counter-Admiral Hubert von Rebier-Paschwitz. On the 26th of August, she was sent to rescue the light cruiser Magdeburg, which had run aground earlier that day, though she was recalled after the Germans received word that Magdeburg's crew had been forced to scuttle the ship. Prinz Adalbert was transferred to the North Sea on the 7th of September and was tasked 2 days later with protecting the mine-laying cruisers Nautilus and Albatross and the auxiliary mine-layer Kaiser while they laid a minefield to protect the southern entrance to the Kaiser Wilhelm Canal. The ship was briefly detached to guard the Great Belt after the Germans received false intelligence suggesting that British warships would try to penetrate the Baltic. She then joined the High Seas Fleet for a sortie into the North Sea on the 2nd through the 4th of November. After her sister ship Friedrich Karl was sunk in November 1914, Prinz Adalbert was detached from the 4th Scouting Group to replace her in the Coastal Defense Division in the Baltic on the 29th of November. She became the flagship for Admiral Bering, the commander of the cruiser detachment in the Baltic, on the 7th of December. On the 15th, she sortied with the light cruisers Augsburg, Lübeck, Amazon, and Thetis and several torpedo boats for a reconnaissance sweep toward Åland. The ships returned to port on the 18th of December without having engaged Russian forces. Another sweep followed on the 27th through the 29th of December, this time to cover a sortie by the 5 Kaiser Friedrich III-class battleships of the 5th Battle Squadron toward Gotland. On the 6th of January 1915, Prinz Adalbert, Thetis, Augsburg, Lübeck, and several torpedo boats and U-boats went on a patrol toward Uto, where they discovered a Russian base for submarines. The Germans planned to attack the base with the torpedo boats and Thetis, since she had the shallowest draft, but due to a miscommunication, the attack was not carried out. On the 22nd of January 1915, Prinz Adalbert, in company with Augsburg and several torpedo boats, conducted another reconnaissance sweep toward the land. While on the return voyage, she bombarded Russian positions at Libau. She ran aground off Steinau during the operation, and Augsburg struck a mine off Bornheim. After being freed from her grounding, the ship was repaired. Michelson temporarily served as the detachment commander in place of Behring from the 13th of February to the 9th of March, when the ship was ready to return to service. Behring returned to Prinz Adalbert on the 20th of March. In the meantime, the Russians had briefly captured Memel. The Admiralty staff detached the 2nd Battle Squadron, the 2nd Scouting Group, and 2 flotillas of torpedo boats from the High Seas Fleet to reinforce the forces in the Baltic. The ships began to make diversionary attacks to support the German army's campaign to retake Memel. Prinz Adalbert supported one such operation, a raid of the 2nd Scouting Group into the Bothnian Sea to attack Russian merchant shipping on the 23rd of March. The following day, the ships from the High Seas Fleet were recalled to the North Sea, leaving Behring's cruisers alone once again. Behring conducted one last operation from the 13th to the 17th of April, with Prinz Adalbert, Thetis, and Lübeck, to support the minelayer Deutschland, which laid a minefield off Dago. On the 20th, the Admiralstab instituted a reorganization of the Baltic Sea forces, and Behring was replaced with Conter-Admiral Albert Hauptmann. At the same time, Michelson was promoted to Hauptmann's Chief of Staff, with his place as Prinz Adalbert's commanding officer being taken by Captain Xerxes Wilhelm Bannerman. The ship remained the flagship of the unit, and Hauptmann made his first cruise aboard the vessel from Kiel to Danzig on the 27th of April. At this time, General Field Marshal Paul von Hindenburg, the commander-in-chief of German forces on the Eastern Front, ordered a major assault on Libau. Hauptmann ordered his forces to support an attempt by the German army to seize the city. The pre-dreadnoughts of the 4th Battle Squadron and the 4th Scouting Group were allocated to Hauptmann's command to provide additional support to the operation. The attack took place on the 7th of May, and consisted of Prinz Adalbert and the armored cruisers Rune and Prinz Heinrich, the elderly coast defense ship Beowulf, and the cruisers Augsburg, Thetis, and Lübeck. They were escorted by a number of destroyers, torpedo boats, and minesweepers. The bombardment went as planned, though the destroyer V-107 struck a mine in Libau's harbor, which blew off her bow and destroyed the ship. German ground forces were successful in their assault and they took the city. On the 1st of July, the minelayer SMS Albatross, escorted by the cruisers Rune, Augsburg, and Lübeck and 7 destroyers, laid a minefield north of Bogskar. While returning to port, the flotilla separated into 2 sections, Augsburg, Albatross, and 3 destroyers made for Rixoft while the remainder of the unit went to Libau. Augsburg and Albatross were intercepted by a powerful Russian squadron commanded by Rear Admiral Bukharev, consisting of 3 armored and 2 light cruisers. Commodore Johannes von Karpf, the flotilla commander, ordered the slower Albatross to steam for neutral Swedish waters and recalled Rune and Lübeck. Albatross was grounded off Gotland and Augsburg escaped, and the Russian squadron briefly engaged Rune before both sides broke contact. Upon being informed of the situation, Hauptmann sortied with Prinz Adalbert and Prinz Heinrich to support von Karpf. While en route, the cruisers encountered the British submarine E-9, which scored a hit in Prinz Adalbert. The torpedo hit below the conning tower, caused severe damage, and killed 10 men. Hauptmann transferred to the torpedo boat V-99 while Michelson remained aboard Prinz Adalbert to oversee the return to port. The ship took on some 2,000 tons, 2,000 long tons, 2,200 short tons, of water. Her draft increased significantly, which prevented her from being able to put into Danzig. She instead had to make the journey back to Kiel for repairs, which she reached on the 4th of July. Repairs were finally completed by September 1915. On the 21st of September, Prinz Adalbert joined a sortie to the Gulf of Finland with the battleships Braunschweig, Elsass, Mecklenburg, Schwaben, and Zähringen and the light cruiser Bremen. They encountered no Russian forces and returned to port on the 23rd. Another operation followed on the 5th of October. This was in company with Prince Heinrich and Bremen, and was to cover a mine layer as it laid a field to the northwest of Ostergon. The ships completed their mission the next day and returned to port without incident. On the 19th of October 1915, Hauptmann transferred his flag to Roon and ordered Prinz Adalbert to take up a patrol between Faro and Dagerort. The ship was steaming some 20 nautical miles, 37 kilometers, 23 miles, west of Libau, en route to her patrol area, in company with a pair of destroyers on the 23rd of October when she was intercepted by the British submarine HMS E8. E8 fired a spread of torpedoes at a range of approximately 1,200 meters, 1,300 yards, detonating the ship's ammunition magazine. The massive explosion destroyed the ship, which sank immediately with the loss of 672 crew. There were only 3 survivors. The sinking was the greatest single loss of life for the German Baltic forces during the war.